You know the scene. You've seen it in a dozen movies. A small band of soldiers totally surrounded, out of ammo, out of time, out of hope. And then, just when it's all over, a thick, mysterious fog rolls in, a miracle that cloaks their escape. It's one of the most powerful images of war. But is it real?
Okay, so let's really dig into this. Is that how it actually goes down? We're going to look at 3 of the most incredible lost battalion stories in history to figure out if this whole miracle in the mist thing is fact or just a really, really good story.
We're going to start with the one story that seems to fit the myth absolutely perfectly. But here's the thing. This wasn't just some small battalion. This was an entire army, and the fate of a brand new nation was hanging by a thread. We're going back to Long Island, 1776.
So after a really crushing defeat at the Battle of Brooklyn, George Washington's Continental Army, all 9,000 of them, were completely trapped. We're talking about the entire main fighting force for the American Revolution, about to be wiped off the map just weeks after the Declaration of Independence was signed.
I mean, the situation was beyond desperate. In front of them, you've got a much bigger, much better British army digging in for the final blow. And behind them, the East River, which is totally controlled by the British Royal Navy and their powerful warships. There was literally no way out.
So Washington makes this impossibly bold decision, a secret nighttime evacuation across the river by boat. All through the night, these fishermen from Massachusetts rode men, horses, and cannons back and forth in total darkness. But the clock was ticking. As dawn started to break, they were way behind schedule. A huge chunk of the army was still on the Brooklyn side, totally exposed.
And then it happened. And listen to this account from a soldier who was right there. At the exact moment they needed it most, as the sun was coming up, a thick, heavy fog rolled in. It was so dense, he wrote, you could scarcely discern a man at 6 yards distance. It completely covered Brooklyn, hiding the last part of the escape, while the other side of the river stayed perfectly clear. The British were blind. The retreat finished, the army was saved, and the revolution survived. This was the real deal, a true miracle in the mist.
All right, let's jump forward in time to the story that literally gave us the name, the Lost Battalion of World War I. They were trapped in the Argonne Forest in 1918. So the big question is, were these guys also saved by a timely fog?
To these 554 men, the situation was an absolute nightmare. They were surrounded, completely out of supplies, and taking casualties left and right. And then, to make things unimaginably worse, their own artillery, not knowing where they were, started dropping shells right on top of them, killing 30 of their own men.
You can just feel the desperation in the message their commander, Major Whittlesey, scribbled down. They'd sent runners for help. None made it. They'd released other carrier pigeons. German machine guns shot every single one down. They had one last chance to stop their own side from killing them.
Her name was Cher Ami. She was their last carrier pigeon. The lives of hundreds of men rested on her tiny wings. There was no fog coming to save them. There was only this one brave bird. As the men watched in horror, Cher Ami took off and was immediately hit, and she just plummeted to the ground. It was over. But then, against all odds, she rose again. Wounded, blind in one eye, she flew 25 miles through a storm of enemy fire. She got the message through. The friendly fire stopped, and 194 survivors were eventually rescued. The savior here wasn't the weather. It was the impossible, unbelievable courage of a pigeon.
Now for our final case. It's 1944, deep in the mountains of France, and another American unit gets the grim title of the Lost Battalion. And this is where the whole story of the miracle fog takes its most dramatic and, honestly, its most heartbreaking turn.
So you've got over 275 guys from a Texas unit who pushed too far, too fast, and are now completely surrounded by German forces. 2 other American battalions had already tried to break through and rescue them. Both were thrown back with horrific losses. So a new unit was called up to try this impossible mission.
And this is the part of the story that just stops you in your tracks. The rescuers, they were the 442nd Regimental Combat Team, a unit made up almost entirely of Nisei, second-generation Japanese Americans. These men volunteered to fight and die for a country that was, at that very moment, imprisoning their own families behind barbed wire in internment camps back home. Their motto was, "Go for broke."
And a lot of these soldiers wondered about that. Why them? Why were they being thrown into a fight that had already chewed up 2 other units? They felt this enormous pressure to prove their loyalty, but they also had to wonder if their lives were being treated as, well, as more expendable.
Okay, so here's the crucial twist. The weather was awful. It was freezing, wet, and yes, there was a thick, dense fog that covered everything. But here, the fog wasn't a cloak. It wasn't a miracle. It was the enemy. The fog made the rescue a living hell. Soldiers couldn't see more than a few feet in front of them, literally having to hold on to the guy ahead to stay together as they stumbled through minefields and into machine gun nests.
For 5 days of absolutely brutal combat, the 442nd fought tree by tree to reach the trapped Texans. In this chart, it shows the devastating cost of that courage. To save 211 men, the 442nd suffered over 800 casualties. Think about that. More than 3 men wounded or killed for every 1 man they saved. It's one of the most heroic and costly rescues in U.S. military history.
So let's pull these 3 incredible stories together now and really get to the bottom of this. Let's separate the powerful myth of the miracle fog from the hard reality of what it actually takes to save the lost.
This chart just lays it all out. The one time a miracle fog really did save the day, it wasn't for a small battalion, it was for an entire army, and it saved the revolution itself. For the original Lost Battalion, the fog meant nothing. The real savior was communication, carried by a heroic bird. And for the Lost Battalion of World War II, the fog was a terrifying obstacle, overcome only by the unbelievable sacrifice of the 442nd.
So what's the real takeaway here? You know, the idea of a miracle in the mist is a great story, but the truth is way more powerful. What really saves the lost isn't some act of magic. It's brilliant planning. It's the desperate, clawing need to communicate. And it's the profound, almost unimaginable sacrifice of human beings for one another.
And that kind of leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? We love to tell stories about miracles. They make us feel like there's a grand plan. But maybe the stories we ought to remember even more are the ones about the incredible, heartbreaking human cost of saving each other.